Welcome to the Supporters Fund Ask an Angel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Potvin. Let's welcome our investor for today, and that is Ajay Malhotra. Thank you very much for joining us today, Ajay.
Very welcome, Jeffrey. Such a pleasure to be here.
Well, we're super excited, not only because you're here today to talk about all the great things you're up to, but we actually get to work with you usually on a monthly basis through York Angels. And I enjoy actually working with you because I think you ask some great questions and you really know how to tackle the startup community. So we're going to get a lot out of today's conversation. So glad you're here. And maybe the best way for us to start is if you could share a little bit about your background from the comp sci side of things. I think you've been to many schools. You've done a lot of great things in it. It's amazing. You're kind of like a jack of all trades. You've done a lot of stuff. So I'm excited to share all of that, but maybe a little bit on the background too on the businesses that you've worked for, and now kind of where you're at today with Canada Startup Company.
Absolutely. Jack of all usually comes with a caveat, right? It also means master of none. But I think I took my master's pretty early on, right, in terms of getting mastery in one subject. So I used to be one of the leading programmers, in fact, India's number one programmer on Lotus Notes and Domino. So I was the highest certified person in the country before I left the country. In terms of background, yes, I have my computer science education. I have a bachelor's in commerce as well, a master's in IT. And then I did a couple of courses in artificial intelligence and financial markets from Stanford and Yale. It's been a learning experience. It's been a journey. So what I've always done is really taken on new things and then figured out what I need to learn, what I need to get under my belt to be able to achieve what I need to achieve in that scenario. And that's one of the things I look for in founders too, right? People who have that attitude of throwing their hat over the wall and then figuring out how to climb it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Yes, I've worked in a few different countries. I've worked in Malaysia, I've worked in Singapore, I've worked in Seoul, South Korea, I've worked in Washington, D.C., in Silicon Valley, San Jose, California. And then I've worked in Miami extensively, and now about 12 years in Canada. Yeah, I'm old.
You can't even tell. I swear to God, you look like you're 25, 30 years old, but you're carrying
no,
it very
Jeffrey,
well.
You're a great liar.
No, the video will prove this. So Ajay, in this experience that you've built up, not only bouncing from different country, working for a lot of big business, and of course, going through and getting educated in all these different sectors, which I love because I'm the same. I just love education. I love learning. And I know the world's trying to change the way we are learning and how you learn. And you don't need a degree, you don't need an MBA, just go out and get real life experience. I'm not sure I really believe in that. I really do think that a lot of our habits and a lot of our learning abilities come through education, from structured education. It really does help. So now kind of fast forward through the education system, and you've really dived a lot into that comp sci and deep tech. Can you give us a little bit more of a better view of when you were working for Motorola, when you're working in these companies? How did that experience really shape to what you're doing today?
Oh, yeah. So can I agree to disagree on one point, though? I totally believe that education system, and I actually used to work for a company called NIIT, which was India's largest company, in fact, the world's largest company by the number of people trained. And I used to be part of the curriculum development side of the things before I jumped on to being the Lotus Notes expertise side of the things. And one of the things that we realized is education can only build a base, right? And then from there on, you need to leap up to any level of achievement that you want to get. Today, we hire a lot of co-op students from University of Waterloo. We actually run a very successful co-op program. And we realized that some of the smartest candidates still do not have specialist knowledge to get stuff done. Right. So, but at the same time, I'll come to your point as well. But at the same time, I am, I'm a big believer in what Khan Academy or Sal Khan believes in, which is to avoid Swiss cheese education. So just like Swiss cheese, you have so many holes. So the goal is to avoid that, to make sure that you're kind of complete in terms of your education. So I think some form of, some form of a degree or some form of a curriculum gives you that complete composure, that completeness to your education without Swiss cheese holes in the middle. But at the same time, that thing would just make you well-rounded, so as to say, right? But to be able to make any impact in life, you have to have a sharp edge, right? So you have to develop that edge, right? They're gonna make you like a blob, well rounded, and but if you want to chop some wood, you're gonna have to sharpen yourselves, right? And that edge comes from you becoming a specialist and a super specialist in one domain, right? And that will only happen in industry, because necessity is the mother of inventions, and you don't have a necessity to get to that point in education, right? The job of a university is to get candidates good enough so they can find a job, right? And so they'll get you good enough to find a job. From there on, if your goal is to make a unicorn, if your goal is to be the best in the world on something, then from there on, it's on you to sharpen the skills, right? And so coming back to your point of working for a lot of different organizations. So yes, I mean, I did work for Motorola, I did projects for GE, I worked for Citibank, and I worked for Bank of America. I was a consultant all through and through, so which gave me such a huge amount of diverse experience, right? One of my first projects was with Bank of America, where I actually started my career in selling for Bank of America. Most people don't know that. They think that I have more of a tech background, but in the first 2 years of my career, I was actually just selling banking products. And yes, and from there on, I went on to work for Reserve Bank of India, the Defense Establishment of India, and from there on, Prime Minister's Office of Malaysia, Motorola Innovation Center, G, Citibank, then Applied Materials, then Saratoga Systems. There was a small CRM company in Silicon Valley called Saratoga Systems. I don't think they're alive anymore, but I worked for them. Then worked for Maximus in Washington, D.C., then Export Import Bank, then Royal Caribbean International. And from there on, I thought that I was ready at that point to launch my own company. And so being in the United States, you had to be very watchful of the visa situation, which, I had a huge amount of difficulty navigating that area. And that's why one of the things I'm trying to do now is to help as many founders as I possibly can in terms of immigration. And in fact, we're launching a new website called immigrate.ai. So I'm funding that project. We're very close to, in fact, I believe the first alpha release is already out. It's pretty much crappy right now, but it's out, and it's a way of putting something out there and saying how it works. So very big on making sure that immigrants, first generation, second generation, whosoever it is, right, any kind of disadvantaged entrepreneur gets a leg up in what they're trying to do. At least they get the foundations correct, and they get the networking that they require to make things happen. And that's pretty much been my journey till now.
I love that. And when you talk about, and this, what I find fascinating about your background, and of course a lot of investors, is that there's such a vast array of angel and VCs that all come from banking. It's almost like it's set in the blood of, while you're working in a bank, they're teaching you about startup businesses. They're coming in, they're pitching, they're looking for money, and everybody in a bank seems to just wrap their mind around how a startup or a business works, and then they go on to be investors. I swear everybody I invest has worked at a bank, has worked at a bank at some capacity and works in the investment space, which I love, because they understand numbers, they understand how a business works, they get the real raw insight, and then they work from there. So that's kind of amazing that, and a lot of your background has gone through the bank system, from tech or from a business perspective on selling, et cetera, as you mentioned. But I think it does carry so much value in this startup ecosystem when it comes to numbers and making investments. And to kind of pull back a little bit on the baseline for education, I love that you're saying that is a baseline, because what makes a big difference about going to university or college is that you've created that baseline. Your education level has got to this standard, which creates the base. And then if you're going to be something bigger, better, you're going to have to educate yourself. You're going to have to go do that master's. You're going to have to go take all of this learning that you're going to do through TED Talks and everywhere else you're going to go. That's on you to build up your specialty and become that security expert or become that banker. All of that information has to come from your drive to execute and get something to completion. So I wholeheartedly agree with that there's such a big room after you finish that baseline.
Exactly. And it's important to finish that baseline, right? We very recently hired a programmer who claimed to be pretty good on VR technologies, but he had just finished high school, right? And guess what? Despite his level best in terms of attention and effort and potential, he could not achieve as much because the baseline was not there, right? But at the same time, when we get people from from Waterloo's bachelor's programs and master's programs in computer science, the base is there, right? So even if they're struggling on one thing or the other, it probably takes a couple of hours to help them out and get them going on it because the foundation is there, right? So it's very important, as you correctly pointed out.
They become a lot stronger on creating and solving problems, whereas if they don't have that baseline, their problem solving may take longer, or just not being able to understand all the different components that go into troubleshooting. So I think it really, that baseline really creates a lot of people that now can figure out how to work with other people. They can be practical, they can be technical, they can just dive into things. And I think that makes a big difference. So that's pretty exciting.
I'll give you a very quick example, right? So one of the sprint planning meetings that I was in, and I'm very technical, so I love to geek out, right, with the developers. And so I remember one of the architects was pointing out the fact that we were using a pre-ordered retraversal algorithm. It's a mouthful, I know, but he's like, we're using that, and that comes with an update anomaly. So what we're now doing is switching over to MySQL version 8 point something, because that has recursive queries built in. And so most people with a computer science background said, that makes sense. So how are you maintaining pre-ordered retraversal? And he said, I had a left and a right field, and and those were causing and they're like, yeah, I understand. And I remember this guy who's extremely sharp in his domain, and he was there, but he didn't have the fundamental basic level of education. And he's literally like scratching his head and saying, do I say something and look stupid, or do I just not say anything at all?
Right? For sure.
So yeah, you're right, 100%. Get your foundation, get a strong foundation, but remember, it's just a foundation, it's just a plateau. From there on, it's your ability to move hard and fast.
And you mentioned something else that's pretty interesting to dive into, and you kind of alluded to, you kind of have to, after you have that baseline, you have to build this structure of execution, or how to keep propelling yourself forward. So I think when I look at founders, and you kind of alluded to this, you have this criteria that you're looking for about how a founder should work, or the things that they should do. How high on the list is execution to you when you're looking at a founder?
It's all about execution, Jeffrey. I mean, people say, oh, I have an idea, I have a really brilliant idea, and I think it's $1 million idea or $1 billion idea. And I tell you, ideas are worth exactly what you can sell them for, right? Which is zero if it's just an idea. The rest is all execution that piles up on it. It's 99% perspiration, 1% inspiration. Inspiration is that idea. The rest 99% is the execution. So
99 to 1.
I have huge respect for managerial talent who bring execution discipline into an organization. I have huge respect for sales talent, which adds to the bottom line of the organization. I think, Google is, and I'll get into an example here. So for the audience, I'll specify why I'm bringing in Google, right? Everybody talks about the fact that the smartest people in the world kind of go and work for Google. Okay? But why is it that still today, 96% or 98% of Google's revenue comes only from search engine advertising? Right? They've had a decade, 15 years. They haven't been able to create a single secondary source of revenue, right? Because they geek out and they respect geeks, but they do not respect people who could bring sales, who could bring traction, who could bring execution discipline. And I think those factors are important, right? I mean, look at Google even doing the Pixel phones. They try to just basically stay in the shadows of Apple, right? So it's always Apple going ahead and launching something next. And Google said, oh shit, we were left behind. Let's do something good enough to get there, right? And that's one of the things that I look for in founders, right? Are these guys going to, and why do I look for? Because primarily most businesses that are there today are the types that winner takes all approach is required in those businesses, right? So I look for a person who's going to have that execution discipline to be in like the 24th mile and then still keep putting all the energy in, right? And that's what's required. You're there, you literally feel like you're winning, but still you're beating, you're kind of competing with yourself. So you could say that I want to be even better, I want to be even better, right? And to some extent it's borderline between some kind of psychological, I don't even think of those things, but like, so I wouldn't know the names, but somewhat almost borderline where you could say, hey, this person is a psychopath, but some amount of that is required to bring that execution discipline.
I love that you say that, because I was told that I shouldn't use that term, which is I look for psychopathic or psychotic founders. So I had to change that, and I now look for founders that have an extra gear. They've got that sixth gear. Everybody's working on five, and they've got this extra gear that they can just kick it in, and that helps them just keep getting stuff done, just keep plowing forward.
Yes.
I think it was when they looked at Kobe Bryant and a lot of the superstars, they said they just have one extra gear. They can be out playing, but they just have that one gear that you just don't have. And that's what I look for in a founder, is that they have that gear. And it sounds like that's the same thing that you're looking for, which is that psychotic or a little bit of the crazy side, but that crazy side is just that they have this other gear to hit that 24 hours or hit that extra mark that's going to bring them over and above on thinking and execution in their business.
Yeah, yeah. I remember I invested very early on. I invested in a founder where I went on a hike with some of these founders, and this person was almost a psychopath in the sense that we were in a very long hike. As everybody got tired, this person started demonstrating. Maybe he didn't get tired, but at least he started demonstrating the fact that he was not tired at all, and he made everybody felt even more miserable. Right. And trust me, I mean, I got about 12x back from him, right? So and that's what you need. When everybody else is getting tired, could you still keep going on? Could you it's all about execution. It's all about getting shit done.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And you're right. It's when you hit that extra gear, so many more things can happen, and more people get behind that, because then that starts to drive out scaling. It starts to upside the business. Investors, people that are buying into it, people that are reading about it, they start to see that this has such fast legs and that they need to be part of that. And then herd mentality jumps in, and everybody wants to be part of that. So that's some great insights. Now that these businesses and you're making investments, you decided to kind of jump more into this space. You talked a little bit about how you're working with BIPOC, bringing in immigration and helping them get into startups or even get into country working on startups. Can you give us a little bit more understanding of how that process works and how you guys are kind of reinventing how that space is going to look? Because it's something that's obviously coming up really close to being pushed to market that you're working on.
Absolutely. One of the things that happened with me personally is I was in the United States and I was getting my H1s renewed and all of that stupid process, right? I mean, that thing feels like a never-ending loop of things. And then every so often you would need to fly out of the country, get your visa stamped, come back. There was that huge sense of instability. And then, one of these years we were coming back, I believe it was 2007 or 2008. We were flying back from France. And so me and my wife decided, we're going to celebrate Valentine's in France this time. We went there, had such a good time in Paris. And then we're flying back into the Miami airport. And this guy pulls us over and says, son, I'm not sure I can let you in the country. And at that point, I had a successful business there. I had employees there. I had a house there. I had dogs there, right? And that just scares the crap out of you, right? You feel like, oh my God, like, somebody could literally pull the rug underneath my feet. And so we, at that point, we decided that we needed something stable first. And then is when we looked at Canada and we moved into Canada. And Canada gave us that really beautiful foundation of a first world country, a social safety net, and a fairly easy immigration process, right? And straightforward immigration process. In the United States, I had literally spent $100,000 or more on lawyers and processes. And, I have like a huge bunch of just notice for actions, right? 797s, 140s, 485s, you name it, it's all there. So one of the things that I decided to do a few years ago when I saw some founders struggle with that thing in Canada. So my personal experience was it was so seamless, so beautiful that I didn't think anybody would struggle with it. But a few years ago, I noticed that people were struggling with it, and especially with the startup visa process. And this was very close to my heart. I'm a very innovative person. I like to always work on new things. And these were people who I believe were creating the next set of businesses. And so I wanted to really help and support them. And I realized that the visa process was really hurting quite a lot of them. It was long, it was arduous, it was very expensive to go through a lot of lawyers. And at that point, I decided to jump into it. And as I jumped into it, I realized that I could streamline some of that. And a lot of people absolutely love that. And then down the line, we realized that there was some education component that was missing as well. So now we're in the process of launching what we believe the world's most comprehensive education program for startups as an acceleration program. We call it Carmen Line, which is the name of the virtual line at 100 kilometers above Earth, right, where space really starts. And so that's what we're up to, hoping to provide them the right education, the right mindset, the right understanding of the market, the right connections here to make sure they can really flourish. Our goal, and we keep our money where our mouth is. We reinvest literally all the dollars that we make in consulting. We go ahead and make sure that every company that we're bringing in, we have an ownership stake in them. So we're not like regular law firms doing consulting. We take a stake in every one of them. And our goal and hope is to grow at least a few unicorns from there. We believe that Canada has about a 37 million population. And I can be pretty sure that a country like Iran or a country like India has more than 37 million programmers there, right? So just because of the population dynamics, right? I mean, a large city in India is the same as Canada's entire population, right? So, so our hope and dream and goal is to be able to import quite a few of the good programmers, quite a few of the good founders into Canada and help them build the next set of businesses, right? I mean, and make no mistake, right? People make mistakes saying that, hey, TD has always been here, BMO has always been here. And they look at those businesses and they think that past performance is an indicator of the future, which it never is, right? The average lifetime of a business on S&P 500 is 16 years. The average price earning ratio, I believe today would be 28 or something. So which means you're paying 28x today for the hope that they even survive 28 years, but on an average, they're going to survive 16 years. So at this point, Canada or us as a country needs to start laying down the ground foundation. We got to start planting the seeds in, and that's why it's called seed investment, right? So we got to start planting the seeds in to make sure we can grow the oak trees for the next 15, 20 years.
I love that. And I think that's a fantastic initiative to build up in a sector that Canada is deemed as being stronger in. And it's great that you're being able to bring talent into the country that's going to be able to be that next generation of not only founders, but employees, teams, investors, inventors that are going to really help drive the country forward into the next millennial. But that's pretty exciting to hear. Now, I guess taking that, is that broad? Is that any country? You mentioned India and Iran. Is that just those two countries, or are you kind of opening this up to any country that's looking to find great talent and immigrate?
Any country. We're open to the entire world. We've had some very successful founders from China. We've had some very successful founders from United States. In fact, the prime reason that I started this off was a founder from UK. right? And so yes, we've had founders from all over the world, and a lot of them are doing real cutting edge, fabulous work where, where my thinking is that some of these guys would actually build the unicorns for tomorrow. These guys would actually build the neobanks, which would potentially replace TD or BMO. And so, I'm very passionate. I'm very driven about it because I could see that happening.
I love it. No, that's very exciting. And this kind of makes me think that while you're kind of bringing in all this great talent, where does this fit for, and in the eye of using AI and machine learning, where do you see this technology changing? Do you think that bringing in this great talent into Canada is going to make us stronger, better, even more competitive against the Silicon Valleys of the world, or the Switzerlands and the Swedens and the Finlands, where they're doing a lot of phenomenal things in Europe? Where do you see this all fitting together?
So, as an investor, we always have to speculate every day, right? And we get very good at it. So you look at a company and you start speculating. So they're telling you their TAM and their forecast, but your mind's already racing ahead and saying, what could they potentially capitalize on? How much would they be worth in 5 years, right? So we get very good at it. So needless to say, we always keep doing it. To the audience, please take it with a pinch of salt. It's just my opinion, but my thinking or my vision that I've drafted out, or my kind of view of what's going on to happen, I believe that CRM and ERP systems ate a huge portion of manufacturing slack out, right? So they literally chew the fat out of all of those processes. The reason we haven't had massive inflation despite tons of QE and tons of money printing is because our manufacturing processes have gotten leaner and smarter, and there's been just in time and all of that innovation that's happened in that area, right? But at the same time, these systems were able to do that, but they were not able to do anything for services. So prices in terms of services has been rapidly climbing, right? An average lawyer used to be worth about $20 an hour. Now they're about $400 an hour. Right. So I think artificial intelligence, where people do not agree with this most often, but I think what artificial intelligence is going to do is going to bring that level of efficiency and cost reduction in services. Right. And that's, I think, the next big set of companies, right? So they will go ahead and achieve that. But beyond that, I think we could capitalize this in the next 5 to 10 years by the time we have some form of artificial general intelligence coming in. And then beyond that, I think it'll be really at that point, the artificial general intelligence is slightly smarter than an average human being. So you would let it provide more services and more information, right? Immigrate.ai is a great example. That system's been able to digest about 5 million different documents to be able to spit out what you should look for out of the 100 different immigration programs of Canada, and where your probabilities would be higher, right? I'll be hard pressed to find a single lawyer in the country. Maybe there will be one, but not a lot of them, who would know all of that information. Right? So the ability of AI to be able to assimilate all that information and then be able to spit that out really rapidly and learn very effectively, I think would cause the same implosion in prices that ERP and CRM and just-in-time caused in products. Right? And at that point, Canada or any country would need to be focused not on services, but on innovation. Right? We used to calculate the economies of most countries in terms of agriculture output. That was primarily the largest part of GDP. And then from there, it moved over to manufacturing. From there, it moved over to services. Now it's very rapidly moving over to innovation. Okay? You're going to have to create new things. You're going to have to bring something into existence that was not in existence before. And and I think the moment we jump into innovation, at that point, one of the areas that's been very much behind the curve is the entire synthetic biology, life extension. I was reading some material off lately. Where is it? Lifespan. That's a book there. I'm yet not done with it fully, but the concepts are that an average human can very easily live to about 180 years, and the theoretical maximum on your life is about 800 years, right? So we do have those as the next few items we could look at.
I love that. And I guess to unroll that a little bit, innovation is so impactful to the GDP, to your comment, that they estimate that 50% of the GDP growth is associated with innovation. So that's only going to keep increasing. So that is such a significant change in how they used to monitor it to how they're monitoring it today. And I think that on the Canadian side, there's certainly a lot of opportunity for innovation to move forward. I don't remember the gentleman's names, but in 1967, they wrote a paper and they said, where does Canada want to be in the 2000s? And they came back and said, we are going to be management. We're going to be the thinkers, and we need to shape the economy to go to that state. So people are going to employ Canadians to go all over the world to help them build and grow their economies. And, that's how the market's changed, and it has to keep going that way, which is all around innovation. So hopefully we've been able to prove that and continue to grow that model out as you shared, because it makes a big difference. And it's a huge impact today on how our GDP is going to move forward. And immigration is going to play a big role in that.
Absolutely. I mean, as global warming happens, which is going to happen, right? The North Passages are going to open up. People don't realize how close we are to Russia there. So we will have to defend our territory. And with a population of 40 million, we cannot defend this land. So, you're going to need, and your military force is a factor of your GDP as well. So you're going to have to grow your GDP at least 2.5 times. You're going to have to grow your population 2.5 times. I can't see Canada being able to defend our coastal territory without a population of at least 100 million people. Right?
That's a very interesting point. And you're right that we have a very vast area of land, which is underpopulated, but in cities, they're saying we're overpopulated. So I guess in terms, there's a lot of outside growth that can occur, but it's to support the economy, it's to support the growth, but even eventually it could be just supporting the country for other means as well, as the world continues to shift and change.
Absolutely. I mean, China is getting stronger. Russia and China, do have a lot of economic, benefits or ties with each other. And Russia has always been a little bit of an aggressive, if you look at their entire history, right? So you're gonna, you prepare with the hope that you never have to go to battle. But if you don't prepare, then there's a good chance that you have to go to battle.
For sure. And you can't always lean on everybody else. And that battle could be just a battle of brains, which is around innovation and who's the smarter, quicker, faster country to be able to maneuver and make things happen quicker. So, but on that, I'm going to kind of shift a little bit. And what question I want to dive into is, what are we mentioned before, the one major thing that really interested you about execution and that really drives you about making investments. Are there maybe 3 or 4 top level things that you can share that you look for when making an investment?
I literally the T7 of venture capital that everybody looks at, right? The team, technology, traction, TAM. So I go through that too, but I always go back to the same founder that I was telling you about, where he delivered 12x versus I lost quite a few different investments, which every angel loses quite a few, right? I mean, that's the rite of passage. So, and I remember the one thing unique about him was when everybody else will stop, he will still keep going. So I always typically look at the Energizer Bunny, right? So it just keeps on going. And that's my number one thing to look at. The second thing that I look for is I never invest in companies who do not have a tech partner, or who do not have a partner who's actually going to manage the delivery part of it. Right. So if I'm investing in a biotech company and they do not have a guy who can actually whip up the miracle, whatever they're selling, I'm not investing in it. Right. Because you would never invest in a restaurant that does not have its own kitchen, would you? Right. So yes, that's my second kind of biggest point. And I think I'm able to disqualify about 99% of the companies with just these two criteria. Number one, the guy has their own kitchen. And number two, the fact that are the two, three founders energize their bunnies? Could they just keep going on and on and on? Because at the end of the day, look, they're going to have to fight the world. They're going to have to outwork everybody else. That's the execution discipline, right? The rest, most of the stuff you could teach them as long as they're coachable.
Agreed with that. And I like the analogy, and I guess I could put a bit of a tire iron in that, is that today there are a lot of ghost kitchens that are coming up, and there are a lot of places that are working that way. So I do wholeheartedly agree that in order for that to be successful, you need these things. But with innovation and change, and turning things into cookie cutter, nowadays you can have somebody that's writing no code, and they're still being able to build a $10 million, $100 million business off of no code. So there is some risk level of trying to understand and where the world changes to. It's also looking at, and I think we were on a call where someone was pitching and their founders were spread all over 2 continents. They didn't have an office, and they were raising funds. And in your mind, you're saying, how does this work? Like, am I putting the money here that goes in the US? And where is the revenue recognized? And who owns this entity? Is this someone I want to invest in? But that's the world we live in. So it's now trying to pair in all of these changes and deciding how impactful is that going to be to make money, that company, and can I get on board with that?
You're 100% right. I mean, the world's changing, right? And change is the only constant we got. The fact, though, is that a few companies will actually end up capitalizing on that change. But no code and low code frameworks make it much easier to get the job done, right? And I haven't yet found a company that took something which was very easy to do that a lot of other people could do and make a unicorn out of it, right?
Very true.
So a few of them would be successful, right? By the time everybody else catches on. So my goal will always be to invest in stuff that's extremely hard to do, that not a lot of people in this world can do potentially. And thereby, I think my odds of success would be that little bit higher, right?
I love it. That's great. And I totally agree with that. The people that got to work the hardest are the ones that find their way to success. It takes a little bit longer, but they got to put a little bit more into it. But at the end of the day, if it was easy, everybody would do it. During your 20, 30 years that you've been working in with big tech, now working in startups, I always like to get this heartfelt story about kind of what it takes to be an entrepreneur. And maybe you can share a story that you've kind of seen where she or he as a founder really just totally blew your mind away on what it takes and how amazing it is to be an entrepreneur. And maybe you have a story that pops in mind that you could share with the community.
Absolutely. I mean, I met this one entrepreneur in Goa, India, of all places. And, again, had the few key characteristics that I look for, right? Extremely hardworking, extremely technical, right? So he could basically take a thing apart, but wasn't getting much success anywhere, right? And those are the kind of individuals that I would look at supporting. And I remember that we supported him at that point to get his first version out there. The next I heard from him, he was selling the product in New York, and he'd landed a few big accounts in New York. Then, unfortunately, the whole COVID situation caused some of the stuff to shut down in New York. He had opened up, a mechanism of being there permanently on an H-1B visa or something like that, where he was employed by his own company, and some legal way of doing it, which he had to now get back to his roots. So now we're looking at bringing him into Canada instead and saying, a more stable, more equitable foundation. And but taking somebody who was struggling and considering himself as a misfit in the culture and the atmosphere, and then giving them the leverage that they're actually able to go to top tier firms and this was in the digital advertising space. So going to top tier digital advertising firms in New York and selling them their product very happily, that's one of the things that comes to my mind.
So it's a great story. So he was able to overcome the barriers that were kind of thrown in front of him, and then shift and keep using that accelerated sixth gear and driving himself forward.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, there were, oh my God, there were so many things that went wrong. I can't even tell you, like, everything and anything went wrong in that business, and it goes wrong in every business, right? So, one of the things that I learned from one of the mentor of mine was, hey, listen, the first day you get sued is not that you did something wrong, but think of it like you've achieved something. Now you're worth being sued. So so as you grow your business, anything and everything will go wrong. That's where the sixth gear kind of comes in, right? You just keep going, regardless, you keep going.
No, that's awesome. That's great. Yeah, someone told me once that when you're getting sued, that was you earning your stripes. And I looked at it and said, 4 times I'm getting, this is ridiculous. So I don't want to earn any more stripes. It's time to do business. So I do get it. It's a part of life, but it's also how you persevere and overcome adversity and drive forward and do it in a clear thinking way, right? And I think that makes a big difference on the potential and the opportunity that's going to be in front of you.
Absolutely, absolutely. This world's not made by people who gave up. It's made by people who kept going, right?
Love that.
So if you are the kinds that'll give up, then you're not getting my money, and I think you're not getting JP's money either.
I have to get you to repeat that line. I got to write that one down. That's awesome.
Yeah. So the world's not made by people who gave up. The world's made by people who kept going.
Yep. I write down every single line that I think is amazing, and then that way I can reference it later. So that's a great line. So you've made it into my Excel spreadsheet of awesome lines.
Thank you, JP.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Okay, good. All right, now we're going to transition into the rapid fire side of things.
Sure, go ahead.
All right. So in the rapid fire, just pick one or the other. It's pretty straightforward. Okay, first question. Founder or co-founder?
Co-founder.
Unicorn or 4-year, 10 times exit?
4-year, 10 times exit.
Tech or CPG?
Tech.
Brand or tech?
Yeah, I mean, tech.
AI or blockchain?
AI.
First time founder or 2-3 times founder?
Double failed founder.
Okay, well, that's a good twist. I like that. First money in or Series A?
First money in.
Angel or VC?
Angel.
Board seat or observer?
Board seat.
Safe or convertible note?
I've done both. Obviously, as investors, our preference is a convertible note.
Okay. Lead or follow?
Follow.
Equity or interest payments?
Equity.
Favorite part of investing?
Speculation and ideation.
I like that, speculation. Number of companies invested per year?
Close to 15.
Brilliant. Preferred term? Any preferred terms that you like?
Right of first refusal.
Okay. Vertical of focus?
As I mentioned, AI for right now, and then the next evolution, which would be my personal evolution as well, getting into biotech.
Love it. Well, we already talked about what things pop out of the startups, and you mentioned 2 things, so we won't go into that. All right, now we're going to go into the personal side. So, one thing about you that nobody would know.
Crazy man. So I have been fired 3 times for being an overachiever.
All right, that's my first time hearing that. That's brilliant. Okay.
The first company fired me because I would stay till late and study, and they couldn't understand why was that. So they thought that I was unhappy with that job and wanted to switch. 6 months later, I was the highest qualified person in that particular domain, and their team came to me for training. Second time I got fired because I was given, in my opinion, almost a clerical job of manipulating data and publishing it. And I had written code to entirely automate it. Didn't realize that I was shooting myself in my own foot. Uh, and the third time I got fired was in Washington, D.C., where I wrote an access control system for an ERP, which they didn't understand. So so I was told, couldn't you write simple code? Why do you have to do magic? And I wasn't fired, but I realized that it was time to move on from there, right? So yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. Great story. Great story. Okay. Book or movie?
Book.
Superman or Batman?
Ah, man. Wow. Batman fights crime.
Pizza pop or ice cream bar?
Ice cream bar any day.
5 minutes with Bezos or Oprah?
5 minutes with Bezos.
All right.
Yeah.
Arsenal or
and
Manchester
his characteristic
United?
laughter and smile.
Yeah, the sadistic laugh. I like that. Arsenal or Manchester United?
I'm not into sports at all. So
okay, all right.
yeah.
So that one won't work.
I'm more a believer of doing shit your own selves. So I'm not a spectator kind of a guy. That's probably what you gathered from me wanting a board seat too, but not wanting to do a little bit of hard work in terms of leading around. But very few people know that I used to be a national level table tennis player. So I like to play, but I don't like to watch. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. You can be inaugurated Arsenal fan. I've been looking for Arsenal fans, so that's good. All right. Bike or rollerblades?
Bike.
Trophy or money?
Trophy.
Beer or wine?
Beer.
Alarm clock or mobile phone?
Mobile phone.
Hotel or hostel?
Hotel.
King or rich?
King or rich, as if they're not synonymous. Rich, yeah, comes with less liability.
Yeah, less things you have to do.
Yeah, social pretense, right? So less social pretense. Yeah.
Is Trump an A or a B on his efforts?
Donald Trump, you mean?
Sorry, I meant to say Trudeau. Trump was another question that I was avoiding.
Okay.
Trudeau, is he an A or a B on his efforts to date?
I give him an A. I love this guy. So I think, yeah. Can it get better? It can get better. Does it get usually a lot better than this? It doesn't.
Okay, I like it. The other question was, does Trump go to jail for all his tax evasion? Yes or no?
Who all would you imprison for tax evasion? I mean, Trump's one of many, many, many.
Exactly. So I just avoided the question because I was like, I'm tired of Trump. So I just took the question out, which is all good. All right, we're almost there.
It was, even though I'm a diehard liberal, in which case in United States term, it makes me a Democrat. But, somehow I still feel that a lot of agenda that Trump brought forward was actually fairly good for that country. They have been losing out in trade talks. They have to get smarter and wiser about what they need. Do I believe in people wearing white dresses and conical hats? No, I don't. But I think a lot of their agenda was kind of good for the country.
It did shake things up. I think the question I should have is, without Trump, has life become boring? Because he seemed to create
It became boring without George W., I believe.
Yes, he did that as well.
Yeah.
He did that as well.
Okay. I loved when he would get lost halfway in a sentence and he'll go like, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, and then he'll get lost. He'll be like, what do I have to say next? Then he'll say, no, you basically cannot fool me twice.
Yeah, he should have wrote half this stuff down. It would have made life a little bit easier for him. It's all good. All right, so favorite movie, and what character would you play in the movie?
Favorite movie and what character would you play in that movie? I'm a big sci-fi fan, so Captain Kirk, any Star Wars is a Star Trek movie. Sorry, yeah.
Okay, perfect. That's awesome. Favorite book?
Favorite book, one that sticks around for very long with me is Jim Collins' Good to Great.
Okay, it's a good one. I like that.
Yeah. I think some of the companies that he's referred to there, which he pointed out as great, have now since disappeared. But but that, and one of the first books that I read was Bill Gates, and I'm trying to remember the name. It was all about the DNA of an organization. And if I remember the name, I'll page you that name.
Perfect.
One of
Yeah,
Bill Gates' first authored books.
it's not coming to me, but I'll look that one up. All right, last question. What is your superpower?
What is my superpower? I believe just like how AI works in terms of taking in numerous amount of data and then spitting out a particular result about it, I think that's pretty much my superpower. I can look at 250 balls up in the air and 250 different dimensions of data, and then be able to analyze them and say, oh no, but we think this is what's going to happen next, and this is what this company should focus on.
I have a red button. I'm pushing it right now. Beep, beep. Yeah, man, that's awesome. I actually had an image I'd throw it up, but yeah, I'm a big fan. Work the same way. My brain just loves data. Just scramble it, come up with nanosecond of feedback. But I think that's a great skill to have, is being able to sweep away all the clutter and all the things that don't need to be there, and just go after what makes the most sense and push forward on that. So that's brilliant. I love that. Well, Ajay, I want to say thank you very much for all your time today. I know we had a bit of a minor glitch. Maybe no one will ever know. We'll be able to edit through that power outage. But at the end of the day, it was fantastic getting to chat with you. Learned a lot, took lots of notes, as I always do. I'm old school, so I got to write things down so that I will never forget it. But the way we like to end our show is we like to give you the last word. So anything that you want to share to the investors or to the startup community, we leave it to you. But thank you again for all your insights and for sharing. It was brilliant. And thank you again.
Thank you, JP. I mean, this was such a pleasure talking to you. And I'm kind of old school too, right? So, I have pen and paper like it too. Last words, I would say, we like, from a perspective of where the world's going next, I think innovation is extremely, extremely important. For a country like Canada, where we have massive amount of natural resources, innovation is extremely important. We've been till now, we always practice our life as if we're sleeping next to an elephant. That's how our politics is. That's how our innovation strategy is too. Even, people have been telling me that even IRCC, which is Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship Canada, also looks at companies coming to Canada as people who could exploit the American market. I think it's been good for a while. It's been good for us. But I think what we have to do is, like China, build the country from within. I think that's one of the things that we should start doing, right? The demands for the United States are going to be different than the demands for us, right? They want to focus on Spanish. We will focus on French. They would want to focus on paving as many roads so Ford can sell more cars. That's probably not an important thing for us. For us, it would be about bringing more tourism into the country, or exploiting the north, or being able to mine underground, right? I don't know why the hell are we not investing as much on hyperloop technologies and on underground tunneling technologies. I mean, today you could have a second city 100 kilometers north. If you tunnel all the way underneath, you could spread your population, right? You could mine the entire area or significant deposits if you could just mine underground without destroying the environment. So there are technologies and innovations that are going to be relevant to our country, and we have to develop them. And I think we have to have open arms to the best talent in the world coming over to us. America was not built only by Americans. They had the largest brain drain from the rest of the world into that country. At Canada, we got to do exactly the same. and we gotta invest in them. We can't just bring them to the country. I think we gotta empower our angel networks to be able to effectively give them that first dollar, that first guidance to be able to grow those people.
I love that. And the reason why I think that's fantastic, I'm going to have to introduce you to an investor from Estonia. They're building an underground tunnel into Estonia. And these guys are awesome. His name is Kusta. And
Okay.
we did a double segment with this because it was so phenomenal on how they set this up with tunneling to Tallinn, which was from Helsinki to Tallinn to connect those startup ecosystems and those two countries together. And it's exactly what they did is exactly what you're talking about, which is finding ways to be innovative, tunneling underground, moving and dispersing people, and being able to do it effectively without affecting the rest of the world, the ozone and everything else around us. So I love that. Some great advice, which also shares to the fact that there's a lot of stuff that entrepreneurs can start thinking of and start mining their own opportunities in Canada. And there are a ton of them. We just got to start being more innovative and thinking outside the box.
I mean, there's a great idea for an entrepreneur, right? Hey, Mr. Trudeau, I'll build all your tunnels for free. Just give me mining rights to every deposit that I come as I tunnel through it, right? We know there's diamonds in Canada, there's gold in Canada, all of that stuff, right? If I'm tunneling through it and I hit that pocket, that deposit is mine, but I could tunnel for free.
I love it. Ajay, you're a brilliant man. Thank you very much for all your time today. We will obviously stay in touch and looking forward to seeing you at the next screening meeting, but thank you very much again for your time.
Thank you so much, JP. It's such a pleasure being here.